We are entrusting the day and the endeavor to the Lord. Let's go. Welcome to my channel where I visit many good books, but live in the Bible. My name is Sarah Christine, and today I want to talk about none other than Daniel or Nayeri's Everything Sad Is Untrue. Full disclaimer, I think I have bought and gifted more copies of this book than any other, except maybe C.S. Lewis's Great Divorce or the Screwtape Letters, because I loved it so much and want everyone to read it. I kid you not. I could have gotten a paper cut on every single page turn, and I would have just been like, onwards. Suffice to say, you should definitely read this book or listen to the audiobook, which is read by the author. That's very fitting because this is an autobiographical novel told from 12-year-old Daniel's perspective, giving a series of presentations to his 7th grade class about his experiences being born basically a prince in Iran before he, his mom, and his sister had to flee because his mom converted to Christianity, to the time they spent in an Italian refugee camp, to the fact that they were finally granted asylum in Oklahoma, where Daniel is giving this presentation. That's the overview, and you may think based on that description that Everything Sad Is Untrue is like a very stressful or serious story, and at parts it is, but it is also hilarious, like when Daniel is describing to his class the difference between Iranian and American bathrooms, such as the fact that Iranian bathrooms do not have the chairs that people go in. It's also pretty heartrending in places, and not necessarily in ways you might expect. Like for me, the moment when Daniel had to leave his treasured stuffed animal, Mr. Sheep, because the Iranian airport security would have just... That was so sad. It's also suspenseful, like when Seema, Daniel's mom, is taken by the Iranian secret police, the Comité, for questioning because they've discovered that she's converted to Christianity. It's also kaleidoscopic, like Everything Sad Is Untrue is Daniel's story, but he interweaves 4 generations of his family's history, as well as incorporating the 1001 Nights, and the ability for him to do that just blew my mind, where we're going from the ancient sands of the Middle East to an Oklahoma Bible study and back again, and it was just astonishing and so colorful in all that he was doing. This might also be weird to say, but it was a very tasty book too. You can tell that Daniel had a career as a pastry chef because the way he describes food is just... I have so many dietary restrictions, but I was like, I can taste this food, whether it was his mom's fesenjoon, which was a chicken and pomegranate stew, or the pasta that they had in Italy, or the tornadoes that Daniel tasted when he was up on the roof in Oklahoma during a storm. Not to keep on with the food analogy, but I also really appreciated how Daniel was able to layer, like a cake, moments that were so tender and humane with moments of comic relief, like when little Daniel let loose a stream of pee in a very fancy luggage store that sent the sales reps into a frenzy. I was like, forget if you break it, you buy it. It's like if you pee on it, if your child pees on it, you buy it. All that to say, I cannot recommend this book enough, and instead of just rambling on about the greatness of Everything Sad Is Untrue, I'm going to read some of my favorite portions to you so that you can take it from the text rather than just me, that this should definitely be your next read. The portions I've selected can be classed under 3 categories. 1, Daniel's Dichotomies. 2, No Reserves, No Retreats, and No Regrets. And 3, It'll Be All Right in the End. Number 1, Daniel's Dichotomies. This was an aspect of the text that I really appreciated because I often think in poles. My fairy godmother is always telling me, Sarah, you are too black and white. And I'm like, you may be right, but I always pray, 1 Kings 4:29, that the Lord would give me wisdom, very great insight, and largeness of heart, vast as the seashore, and Philippians 1:9-10, like, Lord, help my love to grow in knowledge and every kind of discernment so that I can approve the things that are superior and be holy and blameless in the day of Christ. So yes, though I often do think in poles in black and whites, I find that thinking in extremes doesn't mean that you're mean, at least I hope not, and can also be really clarifying. And that was something that I found to be true in Everything Sad Is Untrue, because Daniel likes to use extremes or poles or things that we consider opposites in order to bring out insights, nuance, and greater comprehension. The first of the dichotomies that Daniel employs that I'm going to chat about is on page 174 when Daniel writes, "If you want to know how rich somebody is, just look at what they eat and how they poop. Everybody does both, so it's not like comparing cars. Those are two things you can even compare with animals. So for instance, you could see some dude grab up a bunch of taco salad with his hands and shove it in his mouth like a bear, and then go off into a porta potty on a construction site. And you know that guy is probably dirtier than the bear. Or you see people in Edmond who buy boxed cereal and bottled water, and you don't even know where they poop. Probably every bedroom in their house has a bathroom with candles and potpourri and stuff. They don't even have to smell themselves. And if you're a king, you don't even have to wipe. Poor people don't get to choose what they eat, and they don't get to hide where they poop. That's why we think of them as animals. So there's one aspect of pooping, being rich or not. I have often said that I have the sense of humor of a middle school boy. So I was there for the poop stories, and there are several in this book. They were speaking to my soul, but I will also fully admit that I had never before thought about eating and pooping as fixed variables of the human condition. And then, okay, how do we assess individuals and people based on how they attend to those fixed variables, what for them is accessible or normal? And it made me sit back and think about how there is a difference in how society treats people that shop at Whole Foods versus those that shop at Aldi's, or the people that use porta potties versus those that use potpourri, and how we're often ready to class one half of those with beasts. And I was just like, huh. Well done, Daniel Nayeri. The second of the duo of Daniel's dichotomies that I want to talk about is a little bit more serious on its face than how you poop and what you eat. Daniel brings it up on page 216 after he tells the story of his mom being nabbed by the secret police, and he says, "King or queen reader, this is a good place in the story to hold our breath, with Seema in the demon's clutches, running through Isfahan toward a home she knows she can never live in again, and ask a question that relates to this. Would you rather a God who listens or a God who speaks? Be careful with the answer. It's as important as every word from Scheherazad's mouth that saved her life, and everybody's got an answer. A God who listens is like your best friend, who lets you tell him about all the people you don't like. A God who speaks is like your best teacher, who tells Brandon Goff he has to leave the room if he's going to call people falafel monkeys. A God who listens is your mom, who lets you sit in a kitchen and tell her stories about castles in the mountains. A God who speaks is your dad, who calls on the phone with advice for your life in America. There are gods all over the world who just want you to express yourself. Look inside and find whatever you think you are, and that's all it takes to be good. And there are gods who are so alien to us, with minds so clear, the only thing to do would be to sit at their feet and wait for them to speak, to tell us what is good. A God who listens is love. A God who speaks is the law. At their worst, the people who want a God who listens are self-centered. They want to just live in the land of do as you please, and the ones who want a God who speaks are cruel. They just want laws and justice to crush everything. I don't have an answer for you. This is the kind of thing you live your whole life thinking about, probably. Love is empty without justice. Justice is cruel without love. And sometimes, like Seema, you get neither. Oh, and in case it wasn't obvious, the answer is both. God should be both. If a God isn't, that is no God. When I read that, I wrote in the margins, Ephesians 4:15, where it says that we are to speak the truth in love, because we're told that God is truth. John 14:6, Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. And then 1 John 4:8, God is love. So I'm like, the Lord is both. And I also appreciated how we're presented with a kind of either or, that you're either going to get a God who listens or a God who speaks. And Daniel and Christianity are like both. God is both. And it made me think of one of my favorite recent memories with Ratacutie when we went to a movie to see, actually, I'll just say the movie. It was A Wild Robot, which is an amazing movie. I saw it 3 times in theaters and cried every single time. It was just so good. But anyways, went with Ratacutie to see it a 4th time, and the film would not roll. It was just not playing. And the manager of the movie theater came into us and said, okay, sorry guys, this movie is not going to play today, but I can do something for you. I can either let you watch any other movie that's playing right now, or, and he pulled out, he had these 2 tickets. He's like, or I can give you these 2 tickets, and whenever you want to come in next, it's on me. You can see whatever you want. And Ratacutie looked at him with her signature big smile. She goes, how about both? And she got both. And as was the case here, sometimes we're presented with options that seem to be on opposite poles. Either a God who listens or a God who speaks. But just like Ratacutie found out, sometimes the best answer and the best option is both. All right, my second chunk of text under the header, no reserves, no retreats, and no regrets. I said it already. This is Daniel's story, but the hero, by Daniel's own admission, of this tale is Seema, Daniel's mama, who time and time again is able to metabolize evil and suffering and to return good and grace instead. As I read everything that Seema went through, I could not help but think of God is Dead by Nietzsche, because in this book, Nietzsche gives a definition of a hero that has stuck with me ever since. Because even though I disagree with him on many things, big things, I was like, that definition of heroism rings true. And it is, a hero is someone who faces at once their greatest suffering and their greatest hope. And that is Seema Nayeri. Page 195 has the proof. Daniel writes, my mom, Seema, was a Sayyid from the bloodline of the Prophet. I mean, she was a descendant of Muhammad. In Iran, if you convert from Islam to Christianity or Judaism, it's a capital crime. That means if they find you guilty in religious court, they kill you. But if you convert to something else, like Buddhism or something, then it's not so bad. Probably because Judaism, Christianity, and Islam are sister religions, and you always have the worst fights with your sister. And probably nothing happens if you're just a 6-year-old, except if you say, I'm a Christian now. In your school, chances are that the committee will hear about it and raid your house, because if you're a Christian now, then so are your parents probably, and the comité does stuff way worse than killing you. When my sister walked out of her room and said she'd met Jesus, my mom knew all that. And here's the part that gets hard to believe. Seema, my mom, read about Jesus and became a Christian too. Not a regular one who keeps it in their pocket. She fell in love. She wanted everybody to have what she had, to be free, to realize that in other religions you have rules and codes and obligations to follow to earn good things, but all you had to do with Jesus was believe he was the one who died for you. And she believed. When I tell the story in Oklahoma, this is the part where the grown-ups always interrupt me. They say, okay, but why did she convert? Because up to that point, I've told them about our house with the birds in the walls, all the villages my grandfather owned, all the gold, my mom's own medical practice, all the amazing things she had that we don't have anymore because she became a Christian, all the money she gave up, so we're poor now, but I don't have an answer for them. How can you explain why you believe anything? So I just say what my mom says when people ask her. She looks them in the eye with the begging hope that they'll hear her, and she says, because it's true. Why else would she believe it? It's true, and it's more valuable than $7 million in gold coins and thousands of acres of Persian countryside and 10 years of education to get a medical degree and all your family and a home and the best cream puffs of Jolfa and even maybe your life. My mom wouldn't have made the trade otherwise. If you believe it's true that there is a God and he wants you to believe in him and he sent his son to die for you, then it has to take over your life. It has to be worth more than everything else because heaven's waiting on the other side. That, or Seema, is insane. There's no middle. You can't say it's a quirky thing she thinks sometimes because she went all the way with it. If it's not true, she made a giant mistake. But she doesn't think so. She had all that wealth, the love of all the people she helped in her clinic. They treated her like a queen. She was a Sayyid. And she's poor now. People spit on her on buses. She's a refugee in places people hate refugees, with a husband who hits harder than a 2nd-degree black belt because he's a 3rd-degree black belt. And she'll tell you it's worth it. Jesus is better. It's true. We can keep talking about it, keep grinding our teeth on why Seema converted, since it turned the fate of everybody in the story. It's why we're here, hiding in Oklahoma. We can wonder and question and disagree. You can be certain she's dead wrong, but you can't make Seema agree with you. It's true. Christ has died. Christ is risen. Christ will come again. This whole story hinges on it. When I read that passage in Everything Sad Is Untrue, I was like, oh my golly gosh. Seema is heroic, and that last chunk about how Christ has died, Christ is risen, Christ will come again. The whole story hinges on it. Pricked my memory of another person that I think was heroic, and his name was William Borden, and it is on his gravestone that the words are written, apart from faith in Christ, There is no explanation for such a life. And I just want to share a little bit about William Borden's story because I think there are several interesting parallels between him and Seema. Like, for instance, the fact that William Borden was born into a very wealthy Midwestern family, and he was educated at Yale University. And after graduation, instead of going into the family business, he decided he wanted to be a missionary. That in of itself is amazing. But this is where the story that I heard about him really got my attention. And I've heard people say that it's apocrypha, so take that for what it is. But such a powerful story regardless. Here it is. When Borden decided, I'm not going into the family business, I'm going to go onto the mission field, and his goal was to preach to Muslims in China, his parents, well, specifically his dad, who was the big businessman, was like, don't like that. But Borden was like, I'm going, I'm decided. And like Seema, who gave up all this wealth, all this riches, he was like, I'm leaving the family business. And it's said that Borden wrote in his Bible, as he made that definitive choice, no reserves. Like all that money, all that riches, leaving it behind me. And then he boarded a boat to go to the Middle East in order to learn Arabic, because he needed to learn it in order to speak to Muslims in China. And he wrote in his Bible as he prepared to leave, no retreats. And then when he got to the Middle East, he was in Egypt and was beginning to learn Arabic. But within just a couple months of arriving there, he contracted spinal meningitis. And within a couple weeks after that, he had died. But it said that he wrote in his Bible, no regrets, no reserves, no retreats, no regrets. And what is not argued is the fact that, yeah, on his tombstone, it is written, apart from faith in Christ, there is no explanation for such life. And when I was reading Seema's story, I just had in my head, no reserves, no retreats, no regrets. The passage that I just read, I think, makes it very clear the amount of no reserves that Seema was willing to endure. But there are also two more passages that I'm like, oh yeah, no retreats and no regrets. And we're going to read them. Page 206, this is the no retreats for Seema. No matter how many times her husband lashed Seema with a belt, she believed. You can't make someone stop believing something. In fact, she hung a little cross necklace from the rearview mirror of her car, which was probably a reckless thing to do. But you know, in Oklahoma, after the 100th time I rode bus 209 and got cut with something, or Brandon Goff ripped my hair out, I understood it. They can't break you. You stick your chin out like, go ahead, hit me if you're going to hit me. My mom was like that. One day after work, she went to her car and there was a note stuck to the windshield. It said, Madam Doctor, if we see this cross again, we'll kill you. To my dad, this is the kind of story that proves his point, that Seema was picking a fight, that she could have lived quietly and saved everyone the heartaches that would come. If she kept her head down, if she stopped telling people, if she pretended just a few holidays a year that nothing had changed, she could still have everything. Seema took the cross down that day. Then she got a cross so big it blocked half the windshield and she put it up. Why should anybody live with their head down? Besides, the only way to stop believing something is to deny it yourself, to hide it, to act as if it hadn't changed your life. No retreats. Page 215. No regrets. The legend of my mom is she can't be stopped. Not when you hit her. Not when a whole country full of goons puts her in a cage. Not even if you make her poor and try to kill her slowly in the little by little poison of sadness. And the legend is true. I think because she's fixed her eyes on something beyond the rivers of blood, to a beautiful place on the other side. I'll include it below, but there was an interview that Daniel and his mom did with his publisher, Levine Carrito, where Seema is asked, like, would you do it all over again? And she says, oh, definitely. It's definitely worth it. I would do it again. I'm like, no regrets. And that is the story of Seema Nayeri, as far as I can tell, a woman who has lived a heroic life marked by no reserves, no retreats, and no regrets. And now for the third and final chunk of text that will prove to you that Everything Sad Is Untrue is the book that you should read next. It'll be all right in the end. Page 105. There is an American filmmaker named Orson Welles who said, if you want a happy ending, that depends, of course, on where you stop the story. And Dr. Hammond, pastor, not doctor, says, it'll be all right in the end, folks. And if it's not all right, then it's not the end. When I read that passage, I immediately thought of Ecclesiastes 3:11, where we are told that God has made everything beautiful in its time, and he has set eternity on the hearts of men. And I realized, yeah, Orson Welles, If you want a happy ending, it depends on when you stop the story. And Pastor Hammond, it'll be all right in the end. In the end, folks. And if it's not all right, it's not the end. So often, we are impatient. God has put eternity in our hearts, the Bible says. And spoiler alert, we are not there yet. If you want to concretize the concept of God making everything beautiful in its time, I would just point you to the butterfly. I'm wearing my butterfly earrings. I don't know if you can see them right now, because I was like, butterflies, like everything sad is untrue, provide a proof that you can go through a great deal of darkness and still become something beautiful on the other side. And like the filmmaker Orson Welles said, you don't stop the story too soon. You don't stop the story of a butterfly while they are in their cocoon, when they're in that period of darkness. No, you're patient and you wait for them to emerge. You don't stop the story of the butterfly in the cocoon, just like for Christians. We don't stop the story of Jesus while he's in the tomb. No, we wait for him to punch through. And then it's like, Revelation 21:5, God says, behold, I am making all things new. And if you don't know the Lord, I would just appeal to you to turn to him, because then you get access. I feel like I'm pitching you something, but it's true. You get access to the exclusive promise of God in Romans 8:28, where we are told that God is working together all things for the good of those who love him and who are called according to his purposes. That is what Seema, Daniel, and I believe, that God is working all the bereavement, all the sadness, all the pain and grief, the periods of being interrogated by the committee, or times of being an impoverished refugee, for our good and for his glory. And so if you do not know the Lord, Romans 10:9 says that if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. That is all you need to believe. You don't need to believe in Adam and Eve, Noah's Ark, nothing. You just say, Jesus, I believe that you are Lord. I believe that you rose from the dead, and I want to put my trust in you, and you can be saved. And you can trust and say, yeah, everything sad will be untrue in the end. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that this was edifying, encouraging, and entertaining. And I hope that you will continue to join me as I visit many good books, but live in the Bible. Golly gosh, it is 2 p.m. and black outside with rain, but you know, it's very fitting. Tornado, rainbow. After the rain comes the rainbow. It can be raining for 40 days and 40 nights, but after that, sunshine. Freaking every single page turn. This is not working the way I wanted it to.